So it looks like President Joe Biden may be budging somewhat on his stance that he doesn't believe in reforming or changing the filibuster rules in order to codify Roe v. Wade or make abortion rights into law across the land in the United States. In fact, just this morning in Spain, I don't know what it was, Spanish air, the water, the pressure from the international community, from developed nations that do have better abortion rights than the United States at this point. But Biden is now backtracking on that statement and saying, no, he's now willing to advocate for amending, changing, suspending the filibuster as they did for, again, remember the federal budget with a giant deficit, to do that in the case of Roe v. Wade. So he put out this tweet after the statement saying, we have to codify Roe v. Wade into law. And as I said this morning, if the filibuster gets in the way, then we need to make an exception to get it done. Remember, it was the second time that Biden has ever advocated for reforming the filibuster. He urged Congress to scrap its rules requiring a 60-vote threshold in the Senate to pass a specific piece of legislation. In January, he called on lawmakers to make an exception to the rules to pass legislation to add voting rights protections. And how'd that work out? So at least in theory, he is down for it. In practice, of course, we still have Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who knows where they stand. But Erin, what do you think of this step forward potentially for a Democratic strategy to combat what the Supreme Court has done?
I think I'm not just speaking for myself here when I say I'm a little bit gobsmacked at the lack of plan. This seems like so reactive, and we knew this was coming. Like when the Dobbs opinion leaked back in April, we knew that this was coming. So I don't understand why we weren't spending the last 3 months in a full court press, or 2 months in a full court press, like figuring out what we're gonna do when this happens. Yeah. And instead it's like our leadership, Democratic leadership, is acting like this is some kind of a surprise, and well, what are we supposed to do now? And it's like, you had 2 months. You had more than 2 months. You had, from the moment that Joe Biden took office, and we had the Senate and we had the House of Representatives, we had time to strategize about what we would do. I am so tired of a party that is just reacting to things that activist judges do rather than anticipating things that activist judges might do. We could have gotten out ahead of this. And it's so frustrating. It is so frustrating to see such a lack of urgency from the president on this. Now, I will caveat by saying that this is better than nothing, which is what we were getting before. So I will take anything that is not nothing. And but there's also this, Francesca, like the filibuster is so silly. It is so silly. And the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, so they can just ignore it sometimes? Why weren't we just doing this more? Like, why aren't we just trying to actually lead with the power that we have? It's very, very frustrating, but I'm glad that the president has decided that he wants to end the filibuster on this. If this is all we get, it is certainly not enough, but it's something.
Right, exactly. I will see, and we're gonna talk a little bit about later whether it's enough to bring people out to the polls in the midterm elections, which seems to be the main strategy here. But I think you're absolutely right. Earlier in the week, we looked at Vice President Harris's response to this, and it's like you're talking to a friend. Like, that's how I feel like she's like, so speaking with the leadership of my friend who's going like, God, it's really different when it actually happens versus like, I knew it was gonna happen, but like when it happened, that was literally her response. And the moment that Donald Trump got elected, the reason there was a massive millions of people in the streets was because we all saw this coming, right? In 2016. And so the first chance that a Democrat gets into office, they better Trump-proof or Republican Christian national extremist proof the government. And he didn't in so many different ways. And I know the pandemic, we're always in a crisis. When Obama came into office, you had 8 years of Bush, you had then a financial crisis. There's someone who also, for going back farther in history, did not choose to codify Roe v. Wade either, or pass the freedom of choice act, excuse me, yeah. So But it seems like maybe some pressure from other Democrats inside the Senate, inside Congress are working. More than 30 Senate Democrats signed a letter to Biden urging him to fight back, take bold action, and lead a national response to this devastating decision after the court overturned the right to abortion. Now there's some other things that apparently are in the works. It's not just this, supposedly, we'll see. The White House plans, according to Reuters, to include a range of executive actions in the coming days, as well as promising to protect women who cross state lines for abortions and support for medical abortion. Cool. So there's like, I remember earlier that before the filibuster part, the only thing they had was we protect the right to travel. You know?
Yeah, doesn't the Constitution already do that? Like that's like, we can do that. You know, like it's really weird that there's sort of like, we're gonna make sure that you have a right that you already have. Yeah, we do have that right, thank you. But another thing, why wasn't this just at the ready? Why wasn't this just ready for when Dobbs came down? They should have had one aide whose only job was to just clutch a press release holding all of these points and run it to the press the second Dobbs hit.
Yes.
And they didn't, because that would have at least made me feel, as someone who voted for Joe Biden in the election in 2020, like my needs were in some way being prioritized, and the needs of more than half of Joe Biden's voters were being prioritized. It just seems like such an own goal. I mean, I don't like to talk about this politically because this is people's lives we're talking about. This is millions and millions and millions of people's lives and personhood that we're talking about. But like politically, like if that's why, what is he doing? I don't understand. Yeah, I'm baffled.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.